This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Today's video is a 4-square brain teaser quilt, sure to please. A quilt that I looked at for a while, and I finally decided that it was a version of the bow tie quilt. This is not the bow tie quilt or the brain teaser, but this was just an example of what happens when you take all your different fabrics and you put them together in a pattern, and it can make just a lovely, lovely quilt. And you see hidden things in it as you look at it. And this was one that I did last year, a hand stitched. And all of a sudden, can you see window frames? Can you see boxes where you go in? It's so dimensional in places. And then all the fabrics that you can use in those. And as I looked at this quilt, when I was searching for something I'd like to do, and this was a free pattern from the Quilting magazine, and I said, now this would be a great way to use some more of those colors up. And what happens, it starts out, lots of times you're going to do a scrappy quilt, but you really end up bringing in your other fabrics to make it look like you want it to. And then if you look at this one, it's got a prairie point border on the edge if you want to do that. But the fun of it is, if you look at it and look at how you think, oh, this is crip, there's nothing to it. It's just 4 squares and white squares with little points on the corners. And in reality, the way they did it, it is so easy, and it was so much fun, because I had been thinking, now you have to have, for example, those 2 bright red ones in the middle, those points will have to be touching each other. And then if you followed it out to the diagonal, you'll see that that brown one's got to be attached to a brown one. And I said, okay, this is something I don't think I wanted to work on right now. So but I was gonna try their way of working at this quilt. So you're going to start with a color, a cream or light tan that you want to be 2 of the blocks in a block, and I'll show you those in a minute. If you wanted to do a big quilt, 87 by 95, it said you'd need 3.5 yards of that color. And I was just going to do a lap quilt because all I had was 2 yards. Lots of times when I start on a quilt, I'll say, well, I'm just going to keep going till I run out of the fabric I'm doing for the backing. And so this one I started with 2 yards. And then I went to my basket where my good pieces of fabric are, and I have another box. And I started looking at pulling those fabrics out to see what I could use in this. Here's the setup that I worked with. On the left, the first square you need are for your background. Those are 4.5 inches. For one section, you're going to need 2 of those. Then you're going to make 2 different squares. And the first square is going to have medium 4.5 inch block, and then it's going to be matched with 2 2.5 inch blocks that are from the dark fabric. And this quilt just uses darks and mediums. Then when I got ready for the second block, okay, I'd have the white. I'm going to have 2 that look exactly the same, 4.5 inch squares. And then I'm going to have 2 mediums that look exactly alike. Then I'm going to take the mediums, and if you have them all in a stack, you could do it then. And what you want to do is you want to take and draw a line on the diagonal, because that's going to be your sewing line. And do that on all of those. And these will get you on your way. These are the sets that you have. The cream, the large darks, the small mediums. The cream, the medium 4.5, and then the darks that go with that. And so, like I said, you start out with your scrap basket, if that's what you'd like to call it, or your leftover cuts. But then all of a sudden I found that I wanted a different color. I didn't like anything that was in there. So then I end up going to my stash and my fat quarters and looking at what would go with that. Well, then that would make me start looking at those pieces also for my 4.5 inch blocks. The prairie points that are going to go around the edge are made out of 4.5-inch blocks. And if you decide to put those on there, that while you're cutting these other pieces, you can cut those points, get a collection started, and even press those in between times. And whether you want to try and do this on the sewing machine and do chain piecing, which works really well, or you want to do it with hand stitching, which is what I started with, because that was my carry-along project. I have made these into sets, and each set is going to be an 8-inch block. So if you look again, I'll have my 2 darks, my 2 creams, and my 2 mediums. And I've got them folded. This is really the dark, and got it folded so I've got the line drawn. Then the next one, I have a medium fabric that's got this tan in it, and then I've got the dark centers, and I've got my 2 creams, and the same way here. And then here I've reversed it. I used the dark back and then the pebbly look, but I've drawn line diagonally on each one of those, and each one of these is going to be a set. So now I've taken the first stack that I had, and I've pulled off one 2.5-inch square, and I've pulled off a 4.5 cream. And I'm going to stitch from one corner to the other. And with this, you can, and you're sewing it on the sewing machine or by hand, you're just going to stitch straight across there. You don't have to worry about not starting at the somewhere inside of your square. You can just start and it go all the way across. So I'm just doing a running stitch with, this happens to be a greener thread, and I'm going to go all the way across there. This is so neat because it's a lot of straight stitching and it goes together, and once you get that first square, you just go, okay, I like this a lot. I want to see what the next set I've put together turns out like, and I'll show you those in just a second. I'm all the way to the end. I've used a sharp needle. I've used a good thread. I'm going to go back through there once or twice to hold it really good. All right, now I'm going to take and cut this off. And to make my corner, I'm going to come up to the corner, and I'm going to take and cut off so that I have about a 1/4 of an inch, or if you like it smaller, right there. And when I pulled it back, you can see I've made my corner, and I had very, very good luck with opening all of my seams on this one, and they laid really nicely. So I would have made that one. And then I would do the second one with the same piece, and I'd get my corner, and I'd have it looking like that. And then, let me show you what happens. Okay, here is one set. This is the one that's got the dark center and the medium outside. And if you'll notice, you're looking at it, I've got it turned this way. And if you turn your darks this way, when you get ready to look at the quilt part that I've got done, you'll see why that's important. Then the second one I want to show you, this would be the dark corners with the medium on the inside. And if you look at it, got it pointed that way. So what I did was I just made 2 piles. And the one that you're going to see in a minute that I've got started is going to have 24 of these and 24 of the other, not 48. It's 48 for the, well, the whole thing's for 48. So it'd be 24 of these and 24 of these. And this is where the fun begins, when you've got your collection of blocks. Because if you remember the 2 that I just did, the medium outside with the dark in, and the other one which was the dark with the light in. You remember the orientation? And here again, you're going to see it when you look at the whole quilt. Because if you start from this one and go diagonally up. You're going to see those are dark all the way up. You didn't have to put this on a wall or a board or anything. When you put those squares out there, it came together. And then the opposite thing happens. Go on the other diagonal, you get a light going straight up. One way's the light and one way's the dark. And I'm going to show you, I've already sewn together one square, one large square, which would be the 16 by 16. And it's that one right there. But look at that great cream square in the middle that's got the little corners that are already put on it for you because of the way that you've done it. And you're going to have this great piece in here to hand stitch a great pattern or to free motion quilt. And I think that's what I liked about it so much, that you could do. And you can see different things that you have, where I have the dark and I have the little lighter medium. And then I have the dark center and I have the other side outside. And this one is going to be a lap quilt. And I want to show you one more time, go back to the original. Now we're back to the original magazine page with a free pattern to use. And you can see, can your eye now leave the bow ties and go and find the parts that we just did. We did not put 4 blocks together. That's what I saw initially, was these 4 blocks. I said, that's easy. And then this one, where you do the points. But all of a sudden you see what the trick was with the cream block, because the cream block is actually made out of 4 pieces of background. But it's so easy to construct. It's fun to sew. It's sort of fun to cut out, because you're trying to get a dark and a medium that'll go together to make that bow tie in there, or make this chain. I just love it, and that's why I thought it was really such a good brain teaser, especially for people that like to quilt. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope you enjoy this quilt.